Well, hello there, USU family. Oh my goodness. This conversation is one I've been wanting to have for a very long time. So I'm curious, have you ever picked up A Course in Miracles? I'm guessing you've heard of it. Have you ever studied it? Have you worked through it? Do you know anything about it? Well, in this conversation, we are connecting, talking, and going to get to hear from one of the wisest teachers who has been studying the Course in Miracles for over 46 years. I don't want to give it away. You're going to get to meet her yourself. She has been guiding me every morning and my husband. And today we are going to go deep, deep, deep into A Course in Miracles. So buckle up, my dear friend. We are in for a special, sacred, amazing ride. Carol Howe is our esteemed guest today. Let me tell you about Carol. Carol is an internationally recognized master teacher of A Course in Miracles and an acclaimed author with over 46 now years of experience teaching, speaking, and counseling in the psycho-spiritual field. A close personal friend of co-scribe Dr. Bill Thetford, she authored an intimate biography of his life entitled Never Forget to Laugh. In addition, she has created online programs based on the course principles, as well as hundreds of audio and videos that are amazing. All of these products are designed to clarify A Course in Miracles principles and offer guidance and reassurance in all areas of daily living. We will have all of her information that you can check out. And I just want to say, Carol, thank you. You feel like family. I'm so honored you're here. When you responded yes, I literally did like a dance and was so excited. Oh, I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for joining us today.
You are ever so welcome. It's lovely to be here.
I think it's important because, you've been studying this for years. I would actually love to go way back to what even got you interested in A Course in Miracles. Maybe you can share, was there any kind of searching, seeking beforehand? What did that look like? And then how did you even find, we're going to use ACIM, which, by the way, my friends
Yes.
listening, is a shortened version. So we don't have to say it every time. ACIM. Yes.
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 Well, it started a long time ago, back when I was probably 6 years old. I started just kind of having a sense of what's so and what isn't. We moved to a new town and we went to our Episcopal church, which was the church that I grew up in. And a very nice minister was saying something, and this awareness that was not childish awareness. It's like awareness said, this is not right. This is not what Jesus really said. It was like, and from then on, it would just like, I would kind of get information that seemed to be appearing, so to speak. So it's like kind of following guidance and getting information was sort of built in from the beginning. In addition, I was very interested in the subject matter from very early on. And I had the good fortune of being born into a family that was metaphysically interested. My mother, who was born in the early 1900s, was getting the Unity magazine when she was a teenager. This is like, 1920 or something like that. So there were always interesting books. Of course, there weren't nearly as many at that point, but when the Edgar Cayce material came along and so on, anything that was interesting in that area was available from a young age. So that was a help. And when I graduated from college and was teaching school and working for IBM after that and so on, always in the background was my searching. It's like, I'm still not finding what I'm looking for. In other words, and if you had said, what are you looking for? I'm not certain that I could have given a definitive answer, but I had decades of interest in this material when the course dropped in my lap. And the way it dropped in my lap was we had a house guest who sent us a subscription to New Realities magazine as a house present. And the first edition that arrived in the spring of 1977 had the very first article ever written about the course in it. It was an interview with Judy Scutch. So I read this several page article, and it included the introduction to the text. When I read that introduction, I thought, this is it. My search is over. I have found what I've been looking for all these decades. And so I immediately ordered it. And apparently, a lot of other people who read that article also immediately ordered it, and they instantly had to do a second printing. So I had to wait until about the middle of the summer for my set of books. They came as three separate books at the point. And when I opened that plain brown wrapper and got those books out, I knew it was like the exclamation point on the end. This is the end of the search. This has got whatever it is that's been missing that I've been looking for. This is it. And that has been true for 46 years.
Ooh, I literally have chills as you're speaking, Carol. And for those, I know we have listeners all over the world, and some know what A Course in Miracles is, some don't, some have a sense of it. I know for me, I picked it up, I tried it, and I was like, whoa, this is intense. Now I'm at 180 today. I'm at 180 today. So I'm moving through. Can you share with us, when you say you found what you were looking for, can you share what the it was? What did you know in your heart, in your bones, in reading, starting to work A Course in Miracles? What was it that really had you say, okay, this is it?
I think, if this makes any sense, and so this is not an intellectual answer, it's as if I could feel the truth kind of rise up between the words. It's like, in addition to the fact that much of it was very familiar, I also recognized as I would read it, and then I would immediately read it again, and I would immediately read it again. I just never stopped reading it. It just went on and on and on and on. So and the emphasis that the Course makes on practicing, that you will not reach the message of the Course through trying to learn it. So I try to tell anybody, this is not like your chemistry class where you're supposed to learn information, and then sometime later in life, you're supposed to put the information into practice. This is more a slow learning to reorient the way you address everything in life. But I could feel the truth of this. And I don't know what, that sounds pretty vague, but nevertheless, that was the way it is. Now, people can be forgiven for thinking it's material you're supposed to learn when it's called A Course in Miracles. I mean, normally you think you're supposed to learn a course, especially when it comes from two famous professors from Columbia. But it's not about learning, it's about practicing.
Oh, really well said. If you were to synthesize kind of what ACIM is and describe kind of the high level, because I think we start there. I have so many questions, and frankly, I'm going to let my inner guidance guide a lot of this, because there's just so much in this that I have some deeper questions. But how would you synthesize, describe what this actually is for someone who's listening? Like, I heard about it, I want to understand what it is. Do I pick up the book? I don't know. How would you talk about it?
I would say it's a retraining process. And as a retraining process, you have to say, well, then what is it training us about? Well, it's training us about reorienting how we approach everything. And we've been brought up to believe, of course, that I'm a separate person, and obviously my needs and what's going on with me must therefore be paramount in my life, and that other people are, ancillary. They maybe are like planets circling around the sun or something like that. But it's like, I've got to take care of number one, so to speak, if I'm going to survive on the planet, et cetera, et cetera. The other, we naturally, with that perspective, believe the world is a specific material thing, and it's here before I arrive, and I just do my best to cope once I get into it, so to speak. And it's like, along with, of course, the new physics, it's like, no, everything about those first ideas are incorrect. The material world is not as material as we think it is, and it is formed. See, it's not like everything is already here and we just flop into it.
Yeah.
We're told over and over and over again, your physical world is an outer picture of your state of mind. It's a mirror. So it's a feedback device to help you see where your thought processes and your thinking and your beliefs and the focus of your attention, to show you where they are, so that if there are unsatisfactory things in your life, they didn't arrive randomly, and they did not arrive as punishment. They arrived as a mirror. And if the world could talk to you, it would go, here is a picture of your general state of mind. Is there anything possibly you want to correct about this? So it's like, if you can see it that way. The other major, its whole premise is, when you're healed of the notions that you carry around with you, which undermine your peace and your happiness, you cannot do it alone. Healing requires our interaction with other people. And the reason for that is, the other people, like the rest of the physical world, are going to show us what we are doing to ourselves. So you might say the world and the relationships and effects in it are like a great big 360-degree mirror, so that you're constantly looking at the contents of your inner working, so to speak. Well, with that in mind, if there are things in your outer world that are unsatisfactory, what we've all been taught is, those other people did it to me. They're the problem. They won't behave like they're supposed to do. They're insulting, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And the Course goes, no, indeed. If that were the case, you would just be sunk, because how are you going to require through some sort of relationship management what everybody else does? However, if they're standing there as messengers and as mirrors to say, this is what you're doing to yourself, do you want to stop or do you want to continue? It's up to you. So recognizing that, because I have done counseling with, it seems to be like thousands of people by this time. And basically, everybody has grown up believing the same thing, which is, we don't have any influence, major influence, over how other people treat us. We just have to learn our relationship skills about how to deal with it. Nothing could be further from the truth. And the lessons are to help us practice changing our minds about ourselves and everybody else. And the guarantee is, you become more loving, more helpful, more generous, more things in that column, so to speak, and your world will automatically heal itself. So we have to undo. It's an unlearning device in many ways. It's like, I've got to unlearn through practice some very basic things, like other people are the ones that hurt me, and I'm just the victim. Or sometimes I'm the villain, and then I feel terribly guilty, and they're the victim, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All you have to do is just listen to a conversation or watch TV, and you will realize that 99.9% of the people have been brought up believing this. This is not malicious. It's we simply have been confused, which is why I do believe, and I think there are others who know the Course well who would believe the same thing, that this is probably the most important work that's come to mankind in the past 2,000 years.
Mm.
It comes closest to saying, this is going to show you how life actually works, and therefore how you can operate in it in a loving and a healing and a satisfactory way so that you have a marvelous time being here instead of all the other options about how to be here. But it's recognizing we are 100% in charge. That's for starters.
That that was excellent. And there's so much in there. I'm gonna go deeper in a moment because you
Yes.
said a couple things. One of the things I think that's important to also say, what I've seen is that this, it is for any human being. It is not, in my humble opinion, you don't have to be a certain religion. It really,
Oh,
to me,
absolutely.
it
Yeah. It's
speaks,
not a religion.
right, exactly. And just coming, my husband and I coming from different faiths and backgrounds, it's interesting when we've been listening and I'm like, this just feels like truth. And he's like, this feels like truth. And I've had friends who grew up with no religion or Buddhist or Muslim that have said, feels like truth. And it's one of the things what you said, really, I had never heard it that way, but I could feel the truth in this.
Yeah.
And there's very little else. There are other great, mystics and teachers, of course, in the world. This, though, the way you said it, it is this retraining. And that's something, I'll say this out loud because if anyone's listening and they're like, I think of myself as a positive person. I was like, oh, I don't think my ego is really running much here. And then I started listening to you with the lessons. I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, we'll talk about it. Defending yourself, worrying, even fear, frustration, all of these things that I did not realize was getting in the way of feeling free and happy at a deeper level. And I'm curious, just staying kind of at the broader level of it, how has it helped you in your life and your relationships?
I would say understanding the dynamics in the course are really essential for wonderful relationships. And because when you realize you are in charge of the quality of relationships, regardless of what it looks like, then well, I just can't even tell you how great life is when no one is the enemy. And
Mm,
no one is anybody that you have to control. And no one is anybody you have to defend against. And everybody is somebody you can be kind to. You can have that intention to be helpful to. You can smile at people on the street. You can, I do this all the time. I'm just likely to walk up to somebody in the grocery store and tell them, you're a really gorgeous lady. It's like, just tell them that, be
yeah.
supportive in whatever way you're inclined to be supportive, and just watch your life
Mm,
unfold, so to speak.
beautiful.
It's like,
I,
so everybody is an opportunity to, if you keep in mind, Bill Thetford's little, I am here only to be truly helpful.
mm, mm,
And truly is a key word, because it's not like, oh, you're such a mess, I'm going to help you out. It's not that kind of helpful. It's like helpful in the sense of following your intuition. And your intuition is always going to lead you in the right direction.
I would love to go deeper into some of what you said earlier. And it's such a rich, it's like, how do we condense this? But I think there are some core areas where people find themselves tripped up. I know for me, I can speak for myself.
Yes.
Growing up in a society, I remember, for example, a really quick story. I remember I was in seventh grade it was like the one very challenging year. I mean, I had other challenges, but it was a tough year in middle school. And I remember there was a girl who was just really not very nice to me. And yelled at me in the bathroom and was like, "You're being annoying." And it was so hurtful. I remember I went home, I was so upset. And my mom said, I love my mom. My mom is very loving. And I remember she said, "Julie, you need to stick up for yourself. You need to defend yourself. You need to," and just thinking she's telling me to, something wise. And I remember I went and it like took me a lot of courage and I said something and it's like, I did it. And, my father used to coach me in soccer and he'd say, "Julie, you've got to be more aggressive. You've got to, get on there and like, get the ball and defend yourself, Julie," when people say, so, and my parents, very, very loving, well-intended. I'm just using that as an example. There's so much of this, we have to defend ourselves. So I think even just talking about this idea of the
Nothing
defense.
could be worse because the
Yeah.
underlying premise of you must defend yourself, which everybody learned, your family's hardly unique in all of that, is the presumption is that they are the problem, that they just somehow come out of nowhere and are unkind, or they punch you in the nose, or they do whatever, and that you just have nothing to do with that whatsoever. Well, if that were true, then living in your fortress, your mental and emotional and sometimes physical fortress, would make sense. But that is 100% incorrect.
Right.
Another person's behavior is a function of my thought. And you go, how is that possible? I'm going to
Yes.
give you a concrete, life changing example. When my boys were young, they were like 4 and 6 or 5 and 7 at the most. And the next door neighbors were very nice neighbors, lovely parents. The oldest girl was our babysitter when we needed babysitting. And the youngest was a boy who was about 5 years older than my older son. And he would climb over the fence. We had a 6-foot fence between us, and he'd want to come over and play. He was not a mean boy. He was not trying to be difficult, but he was very big and for his age and kind of clumsy. And they'd start to play and wrestle around, and pretty soon somebody would get hurt and somebody would start to cry. And I would run Hank home and say, "Hank, you're just too old to play with the kids," because this would happen over and over and over again. No matter what I did, Hank was, I would run him off and I'd look out in the backyard a little bit later and there he was again. One time he was playing in our house and I had to take the boys to someplace and I accidentally locked him in the house. He was back in their bedroom playing and I didn't even know he was there. I came home and here was this boy locked in my house. Interesting analogy. So, nevertheless, at some point, and I won't belabor some of the other stuff that happened in the middle, I thought, and the thing that I didn't want Hank around for was the words were, "He's too hard on my kids. He's not doing it deliberately, but he's too big and he's too strong. It's not a good combination." And then I thought, now, this is before the course came along, or right when I was brand newly with it. I thought, I wonder if I'm too hard on my kids, not wrestling around in the backyard, but am I too hard on them because maybe I'm too demanding? Maybe I don't know how to be a good mother. My boys, by the way, are amazing. And I
I'm
didn't ruin them
sure.
after all. And it was like I thought, I I might not be doing everything right, but nobody in the world is trying harder to do the right thing, show them the right example, and so on and so forth. And it was as if I got off of my own case about this, about not being a good mother. I want you to know that beginning the next morning, Hank stopped coming over. Hank virtually vanished from our lives. Now, after months, and I don't know how many months of trying to get him to go away, to no
Mm.
avail, I changed my mind. I don't tell him I've changed my mind. I change my mind, and the problem is solved. And I have both seen that within myself over and over and over, and with hundreds of other people who have recognized, oh, what I see in them is what I greatly fear in myself. And so now I'm going to deal with recognizing, and this is key. Okay, so I was selfish or whatever it was that the other person is being blamed for. And then what I do, and everybody listen, I help them see, yes, you may very well have been selfish and your behavior may have been inappropriate, but I will ask them, from the perspective of that moment, was there anything else you could have done other than what you did? And every single I said, not from today's perspective where you could look and go, of course I could have done other things. I'm talking about at the time. Is there anything else you could have done? And 100% of people will say no. I'll say no is the right answer. You were doing the highest and best of which you were capable at that time, with the beliefs that were operative, with what you understood, with kind of where you were in your own evolution. And no one should be punished and nobody should be judged when they're doing the highest and best they can do. And it just kind of allows everything to kind of like, okay, now when you recognize that feeling guilty is not called for because this was a mistake and not a crime, now we can look at the mind changes that are necessary to go forward, so to speak. But you can't go forward until the guilt begins to be relinquished. And you cannot relinquish it when you think that you really have been a terrible person or whatever, when you realize your behavior may have been off track, but this had nothing to do with you. And the Course is trying to tell us, we're not trying to whitewash the words and deeds of people. Nobody can say, hey, what's going on over in Ukraine is just fine with me.
Right.
Nobody's asked to do such a thing as that. But we're asked to see that the words and deeds have nothing to do with the actual presence. We're asked to see that the inherent presence of us, which is not the same as the words and deeds of the body, remain innocent no matter what. And so we're asked, okay, do you want to look at the words and deeds level and do all of your judging by that? Oh, you won't like the result of that. But if you recognize that your goal is, I'm determined, there's a lesson that says, I'm determined to see. Well, what we're actually being asked to be determined to see is that the life presence of everybody is innocence and love itself. And if you focus on that, rather than the words and deeds, life is very different.
This episode of the You-est podcast is being sponsored by Therasage. Infrared saunas are all the rage right now. I really wanted one, but I didn't know where to put it. Therasage has my most favorite thing in my life. It is the Solo infrared sauna. It is so powerful. I sweat buckets every day. Infrared saunas are really, really good for detoxification, for releasing any kind of toxins or anything in your body that you don't need. It's super easy to assemble. So if you're interested, go check out Therasage. Go look at their Solo infrared sauna, but be sure to use the coupon code You because you can get 10% off. You're welcome. Ooh, there's so much you said, Carol, in this. And I think even getting to the kind of premise, which, I know for some being raised thinking about, that you're a sinner, that something's wrong with you. And what I resonated immediately with is this, what you just said, that the baseline, the understanding, to reflect what you said, is the inherent presence of us is innocent, is love, no matter what. And that goes for every human being, even for those who've, done atrocious things that we would consider. I think that can be a leap for some people, which is probably why it takes time to get that no matter what, we all are these
Yes.
innocent, loving beings.
Yes. And the thing of it is that if you decide to change your mind now, you're not going to get results 5 years later. If you look in your bathroom mirror, and I've got on this black thing, I don't have to wait until next week for the black blouse to show up in the mirror. The reflections in the mirror are instantaneous. And the same is true for our own um, experiences. I'll give you another just very bizarre experience. I, of course, was born a long time ago when parents didn't know what parents know now, and it was the era of children to be seen and not heard,
Yeah.
and which naturally is going to result in some inappropriate parenting when they're thinking they're doing the right thing, so to speak. And so I always grew up thinking my dad, and nobody was mean to us or anything like that. My dad, went to work and came home, and he was a nice guy, but he wasn't interested in us. I look at my boys and their stunningly outstanding parenting of their children, and it's like, oh my goodness, if everybody had a parent like that, the world would turn upside down, overnight. So I didn't think he disliked me. I always thought I was of no particular importance to him in some way, So, and about, I don't know how many years ago, not too long after the course came, let's say 40, 45 years ago, was when psychiatrists were beginning to realize that emotions and stuff like that are kind of stored in the body, so to speak.
Yeah.
This was the era of learning to pound on the bed with the tennis racket and express what was going on and stuff like that. So I was always on top of any new thing that came along. So I would have my boys off with a neighbor, and we'd get together, and it was so hard to do when you're raised to be a nice, polite little girl, to scream and yell and pound on the bed, even with my best friend there. So we did this, and it was both hard in the beginning and sort of a big relief. And I would never have told my parents what I was doing, because they thought they were doing just fine. They thought they were doing what they were supposed to do. And I was always very successful in life, so they could probably say, see, this is because of our great parenting. Well, that was in the summer. We ended up going to my parents in another state for Christmas, because my intuition said, this is the last year everybody's going to be alive and well. When I went down for our Christmas, honest to God, I had an entirely different father. He welcomed me. He seemed like he was so glad to see me. We had long, wonderful conversations, which we had never had before. He was, as I say, he was just sort of, would rather read his book than, deal with the kids, but more of a thing. And it was splendid. And when I left, he gave me another couple $1,000s and said, I want you to have this just in addition to your Christmas present. It was like I had a father who was about 180-degree opposite from the father I had grown up with. Well, guess why? Because I was busy releasing a lot of my own, what I was holding on to, both emotions and thoughts. So I changed my mind, and 5 months later and 1,000 miles away, his behavior is entirely upside down and fabulous.
Such a great
See what's
example.
possible?
It's amazing. Yeah, the course gets, and this way more than I do, but talks a lot. I mean, I think one of the underpinning aspects is forgiveness and releasing grievances. Maybe you can
Yes.
talk for a moment. I mean, I feel like I'm just it's like I feel like I'm in nursery school with this course, and you have a
Yeah.
PhD. So I'm like, can you? But I know there are others that might be pre-nursery school with me, and so I want to try
Yeah.
to. And others listening are like, all right, Julie, there's so much to it. Yet, I'm curious, maybe of an example of this, this idea of forgiveness and releasing grievances, especially when it's something that feels so personal and maybe it was a client, someone that you've counseled, it just really getting the principle behind that. And, of course, as you said, this is a practice. It's not just theory, which is what I love. I think eh, I don't want to say it's a tall order. I don't want to put that in the universe. However, it's taken time to learn how to really truly release. And I've actually found with myself, releasing grievances or things that I feel like, oh, wow, I, wish I'd done that different. Or I'm curious though, for you, maybe to talk for a moment about the power of what the course says about forgiveness, releasing grievances, and then what you've experienced with that or
The,
someone.
forgiveness is the key, and forgiveness is not pardoning.
That's right.
It's because we've been taught that forgiveness is focused on somebody else. It's letting go of our own grievances and letting go of our own guilt, because we have to realize that we go, yeah, I feel some guilty about some things up here, kind of in my conscious mind, but it's all the stuff we carry in the unconscious mind, including some guilt about being unworthy, about being undeserving, about not being okay, stuff that gets programmed in before you're 3 years old, when you do not yet have a functioning left brain to do any monitoring of this. And because it gets wired, this is at the time and space level, when it gets wired in before you're able to know what's happening, you grow up and listen carefully with beliefs about our unworthiness, or we can't do this, or we don't deserve this, or this is not okay to do. And we have no idea that these are beliefs and not truths. But we grow up and we build defenses against somebody discovering these awful things about us, which aren't awful things and they're not about us, but we have no way of knowing that. So we carry a lot of guilt that we carry about what we've done to ourselves is not known to us, which is why people will come along out here that do and say hurtful things, and we think they're doing it to us. What we have to see is they're coming along as messengers. And if we could put some words to what's really happening, is they're like pushing a button. They're bringing into our awareness what we fear we are like and what we have done to other people and so
Mm.
on. So it's bringing what has been driving our lives in many ways, but unknown to us. You can't heal what's unknown.
Right.
You just feel like, well, things just happen to me. But they don't just happen to us. They are created by stuff that we're carrying around that we don't know we're carrying around. Well, you cannot heal something you don't know is there.
Right.
And thus, the need for relationships to show us what we need to be shown so that we can change our minds. Because you can't change your mind about something that you're unaware of. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I was very lucky when I started this. There's an amazing, she's an author. She's been on my show, Barbara Stanny Houston. I don't know if you know her. She's written Overcoming Under Earning and Sacred Success. I adore her. She's become a mentor and a friend and has been working with me. And it's such a gift. I listen to you every day, Carol, and then I
Yeah.
leave messages and I'm like, Barbara, all right, I'm seeing my ego. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing the mirror. I'm seeing in this way this person is responding, or in sometimes the best way, someone who's just so kind. And I will say that for someone listening in who's new to this or just starting to get their kind of understanding about it, it's very powerful. It's a powerful shift, at least what I've found. I'm curious for you, when you start to see everybody as a mirror of where I am in my conscious and unconscious. And it takes the personalization out of it. And I had this recently, just with an experience, and I was like, oh, that person is showing me something that I have not wanted to see within myself, and it actually has nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
That mirroring is really powerful, and I love that I know it talks about it's not this kind of forgiveness. It's not what we often think. It's not pardoning. That's the thing you
It's
said.
not pardoning at all.
No,
At all. It's letting go of what we need to let go of. And yes, it's kind of it, the thing that you just said that we also have to take into account is we're remembering when we did thus and so, and when we were inappropriate in some way or whatever. Here's what one must remember: the past doesn't exist. It's not stored anywhere, which
right,
means none of our transgressions, nothing we've ever done or said, good, bad, or otherwise, is anywhere. It does not exist. So if a past doesn't exist, nothing that I've ever done, good, bad, or irrelevant, exists. There's only now. Now, listen to how exciting this is. Right now, there's no past, there's no future, everything's clean. Have a brand new clean slate now. Now, in this brand new clean slate, I only have two choices that I have to choose from. I can choose between living in my little fortress, where I'm involved with the promotion and protection of my ego self. Like, how am I going to make it in the world? And how am I going to be okay? And how am I going to get what I want? And so on and so forth. Or in that very same moment, I could decide I'm here to be truly helpful. I'm here to follow my guidance, because my guidance knows exactly where I need to go, where I need to be, what I need to be doing, who I need to be with, what the focus of my attention needs to be. So I don't have to undo anything. I don't have to figure out a lot of anything at all. I have to go, okay, I only live in the moment that I'm in, and I only have two choices about how I will live in the moment that I'm in. So I can be defensive, and I can be, it's all about me and I've got to figure out how I'm going to succeed in the world. Or you can decide to be helpful, and you can follow your guidance, because your guidance knows what you need to be happy and successful and etc. in the world. Your ego mind tries to look at outer things and figure all this out. Well, your guidance is tuned in to the presence of life itself. It already knows. It doesn't have to do any figuring out. All you have to do is follow those impulses, like whether it's move here, get a job here, say this to this person, write this book. It's like whatever it is, it can be minor or it can be major. But when you combine, I truly do want to be helpful to anybody that I'm thinking about or that I run into, and I want to follow my guidance, knowing that that's always going to result in a better outcome than anything I could ever dream up, then this reduces life to a very simple, it's a simple choice I have to make. And if I make an incorrect choice and make life all about me and you're the problem, et cetera, kind of thinking, the next moment I can change my mind entirely, because poof, that's gone. It's not following along behind me like a great big pile of transgressions. It's gone. And your guidance will shine clearer and clearer all the time as you kind of get the debris out of the way. And you will see, things will just show up in your life. The right person, an opportunity, you'll be directed to go to this store to find the shoes you want instead of that store. In other words, it can be little tiny stuff. It can be great, large, momentous things. It's all the same to guidance. It can direct you large things, small things, always with everybody's best interests in mind. So, see, life is not as complicated as we thought. And it is complicated if we think my well being rests in the hands of all kinds of people and situations and countries and governments that don't know anything about me or really particularly care about me. Well, my gosh, what am I going to do then? Well, if that were the case, we should all be very worried. But since it's not the case, and I'm always being looked after and taken care of, I just have to tune in to where that wisdom is. And doing those lessons greatly helps solidify this as this is the way I don't just occasionally live my life, but this is the way I'll live my life routinely. And life will be routinely much better.
Well said. Again, my 180 days in, I mean, things that have been happening, it's just, it's miraculous, which is what,
It
what the
is.
course, what the course
It
says.
is.
Yeah. I am wondering when you talked about guidance, we talk a lot about intuition here. And I've always felt like all of us were walking around with this incredible, soul GPS that can tell us what
Absolutely.
what to do. How do you tune in? Do you have any things that help you? And I'm curious when we talk about tuning in, because I love how you talk about, whether it's God or source or love, like for you, what are we tuning into?
I would say it for me personally, which is, of course, what I am most acquainted with, is how life works for me, is it's almost like I always call them my guidance telegrams. They almost feel like they come in from the left hand side and kind of pass across my consciousness. If there's something that I need, and I will not bore your audience with a bunch of details, but since I've recently moved back to Denver and I'm, setting up housekeeping and various things need to be purchased and so on for this house as compared to other ones, drapes and stuff like that. It's like I get guidance that will, very specific guidance that just kind of comes in. It's like, okay, I've got to get like, can't really see them, but behind me are some kind of teal colored drapes. Well, I needed to get drapes. I was guided to go to a certain place, and there were 3 panels of drapes, the 3 panels that were behind me. Everything else was like gray and beige and neutral colors, the perfect length, the perfect size, the perfect color, and the perfect number. 3, period. And it was like, but I was guided to go there and look there and all the other. So it's little things like that. In the drape department, in my master bedroom, it was like, okay, I need a set of drapes for this great big sliding glass door window thing. And it was like literal information that said, go to Penny's in Aurora and you will find the drapes. It's like a sentence like that. I go, it's way far away, it's a suburb of Denver. I go to Penny's and there are 2 panels of the perfect color emerald green drapes. What can I say? Nothing is more specific than when there's literally a sentence that arrives and says, go here and I will do this. I couldn't find a key to the mailbox because here, since I live in a condo now instead of a house, it's all in the same place. I could not find it. And I looked at every reasonable and unreasonable place. And it was like all of a sudden, a little while later, I got an instruction that said, go to the closet, the closet, a coat closet that's by front doors. So I stood there in front of the closet and just found myself opening the door and starting to feel in the closet of parkas, because this was back when it was cold. There was the key. It was like, what's more specific than that? You're being told where to go, what will be there, how it's all going to work out. And so it's not like you have to go, oh my gosh, this guidance is so confusing and so metaphysical. I don't, it's like, no, it's not confusing and metaphysical at all. it was like a year or two ago, unbidden, because I wasn't looking for an answer for something, came this message that said, I was doing some kind of weekly blogs and stuff, and it said, record chapter 31 of the text. And I think I said out loud, hey, that's not what I do for these blogs. But it was like, record chapter 31 of the text. And it's like, okay. So I did. And a few days, and then I got a whole bunch of email from people saying, will you record the rest of the text? And I thought, does anybody know how long that takes? And it said, do it. And it took me a year to do, but I have recorded the entire text.
Oh, wow. You're talking about recording A Course in Miracles started
Yes,
from
I am.
because,
But that came, I didn't ask to do that. I didn't ponder over whether that would be a good idea or not. So
wow.
guidance comes not only if you're looking for something, but guidance comes to say, do this next, call
Yeah.
this person. I mean, it just comes for all kinds of things. And it's a matter of trusting it, especially when it seems weird
Yes.
or, but after you've done this for a while, you just realize I can kind of float on a cloud of guidance. Now, that doesn't mean I float through the room, but it means I don't have any concern about anything at all. In other words, it's like when you don't have to worry about anything and you know that your own attitude is in charge of basically the quality of your life. You don't have to be concerned about, will I meet the right people? Are they going to do the right thing? All of that just goes out the window. And you go, right here in this moment, I'm here to be truly helpful and I'm here to follow my guidance. End of story. If you do that, you're home free. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes sense. And it's beautiful to hear what can happen when you practice,
Yes.
these principles, these lessons. Um, One of mine is I'm determined to see as well. I have some
Yep.
highlighted. I say it all the time. Determined to see that I just finished the review. The other one is, God is but love, and so am I. And then I say, and so is everyone. And it's like a neutralizer, just
Mhm.
for everything. And so what you were saying though, this is really important. And I just have this feeling the more you trust it and have faith in it and listen, the stronger it is, the more that it keeps coming through. Yeah, it's powerful.
You froze up there a minute, so I couldn't hear.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it happens. And I think the thing from what you just said is just to really trust our guidance, to really trust it.
Yes. And that means you don't argue with it and you
Mm,
you just go, okay, well, I'll try that and see what happens. And if it's a great disaster, which it never is, but it's like there's a great sense of safety and there's a great sense of certainty
mm,
because particularly because we get to decide where our attention is going to be placed. And since what we pay attention to is creating our outside world, it's like you cannot make a story for being at the mercy of anything else.
yeah,
And the great news is you don't have to take my word for it. You don't even have to take the course's word for it. Try it and see.
yeah,
And you will find that it works. So what could be simpler than that? Try something and see. So
yeah. This it's I was laughing because this interview with you, I found you through a dear friend. I'd already started it, and I found you, and I just felt so grateful. So thank goodness for the guidance that said do the whole course, because I'm one of the people, the many, many, many thousands, probably millions of people who listen along with you. And my guidance said, reach out to Carol, invite her on your show, have a conversation. Literally, and I just okay, okay.
there you
I
go.
here we are, and it's powerful. I'm just, I know this from talking to many people about intuition and guidance and trusting it. I think what you just said is important. Try it. Like, I sometimes keep a little evidence journal so I can look and see what happened when I did it. It's never steered me wrong. Never. I'm guessing in
No,
your,
it never will. And you will find um, you will find a real kind of delight in making every encounter with somebody a really kind encounter. There's just nothing that you can't say, that even if it's hello,
yeah,
to the folks out cutting the grass in this great giant condo unit kind of thing. In other words, it's just,
yeah.
there's something that feels so right about being open so that whatever's in front of you, including whoever may be in front of you, you're sort of approaching your next moment with open arms. In
Mm,
other words, whatever I'm going to contain in this next moment,
yeah.
whether it involves people or animals or things or nothing at all, like whatever it is, whatever's in this moment, I am going to fully embrace, recognizing that whatever those elements are, I put there. Now, I don't know how I made that person be walking up the sidewalk, but it doesn't matter. If that person's there, then I can smile at them or say hello, or I like your shirt, or whatever it might be. In other words, I can connect with that person both in my own mind and in some little outer way as well, where
It,
that works.
it really disappears any kind of victimhood, and it also disappears enemies. And I think
Absolutely.
sometimes when I hear, and maybe you can answer this, you've lived on this planet longer, you're wiser than myself, and probably, the years you've been, probably than many listening. And I'm curious, you've seen people in history do really terrible things or challenging things. How do you, because I'm thinking, I can almost like hear someone asking, how do you hold this innocence, just getting back to that for a moment, with somebody who maybe, has done something really not the best? We'll just keep it
That's a
general.
very good question, because I've often said, if I could just get everybody in the world to just stop and give me 10 minutes, I've got something important to tell you. And that is, do not make your emotions the enemy. Practically every culture in
Mhm.
every century teaches us about holding in and holding back, and don't let anybody see you sweat, and don't, in other words, that we've been taught either directly or indirectly by example that our emotional nature is a stepchild that should be banished as much as possible. And nothing could be further from the truth. So that if you've got an issue with a person or a situation or whatever, and you have an emotional response to it, or you're carrying something about it, trying to resolve the issue or heal something out here is not going to work out well until you deal with your own emotional nature. And that means, in other words, look at the addictions that people fly to. I mean, you can turn anything into an addiction so that you can avoid feeling how you feel. And it doesn't, we don't have to waste time on, like, how in the world did our emotions get such bad press? But
Mm,
they did. And so for centuries, and for in all sorts of populations, the idea that if you're upset, if you're sad, if you're angry, if you're whatever, you must be defective, you must have something the matter with you. In other words, we've been taught that this is not okay. Especially, the old, if you don't stop that crying, I'll give you something to cry about.
mm,
Happily, I don't think I grew up with that, but a lot of people do. And so it doesn't take much to realize I wonder what would happen if all the drugs, alcohol, overeating, sex, golf, everything else, if all of that masking were swept away, what we would find is most people carrying grief and some distress and some sadness and some
Yeah.
whatever around with them. And that's one of the things that we do so much defending against, is either feeling our own feelings or letting anybody else know that they're there, feeling like, well, you're not cool if you're ever upset. And the more we repress them, the bigger they get. And the other thing is, when you're kind of chronically upset, and you always are, if you spend years and years and years indulging in the assorted addictions, you're continuing to squelch what's interfering with your peace of mind. You're carrying interference around with you, which is never going to work out. And this idea of trying to, like, another reason why I must live in my fortress is that so that nobody will know my upset, and that I don't have to feel my upset because it means something about me, et cetera, et cetera. So what I would say to everybody is that there's the short range solution and the long range solution. The short range is whatever the issues are in your life, set them aside. And finally, be honest enough to allow yourself in private, go out into the desert if you need to, do whatever you need to do, to allow yourself to feel how you actually really feel. Because the more it's bottled up, the worse for everybody. And you cannot practice these principles as successfully as you would like to while you're busy hiding. Those are inconsistent goals, so to speak. So here's also the reason why this works. For us to just decide, I'm going to feel how I feel, is imagine this, the core of our being is like, and this is literal, like the fire of the Holy Spirit, into which all things are brought and are erased. You probably remember that the Christian religion associates the Holy Spirit with a flame. Well, other religions do too, and in their own way. And I had an astonishing experience once in my life in 1984. You never forget an experience like that, where I actually experienced and felt like, and I could sort of see in my mind's eye, flames. I could see flames, recognizable flames. And as thoughts came close to these flames, they vanished. All they had to do was approach this flame of the Holy Spirit. We would use it in modern parlance. It was gone. Well, if I'm busy pushing my emotions away and not allowing myself to feel them, I'm pushing them away from where the healing takes place, is right here in my very own self. So until I can stop pushing and defending and allow myself to begin to heal the emotions, feel them, allow them to be, it would kind of, and then you don't, and then you're done. It's like allowing them to be, and you're done. It would be like if you had ice cubes and you put ice cubes in a pan and you set it on the fire, and you wanted them to melt. You don't have to do anything else. You just set them on the fire, and the fire takes care of things from there. You bring something to the literal holiness of your own self, and things begin to resolve. What do you think?
It's beautiful.
That's
Beautiful,
what
Carol.
actually really happens. And
Yeah.
so that when we're taught, never let them see you sweat, don't let anybody know what's going on. Hold everything in, hold everything back. Then
Yeah.
you're defeating your own purpose for
Yeah.
being here.
Mm.
That's why we so need to uh, teach our little ones and learn for ourselves. And
Yeah.
where we are feeling things that are bottled up, then we do need to do whatever we need to do to release them. And if you wonder what they are, or if anybody's listening, then just stop your drinking or drugging or food or sex or golf or whatever, and just allow yourself to be with yourself so that there's space for that to come up and
Yeah.
for practicing this healing to take place. And then it's not theoretical. You go, oh, this is how
Yeah.
it is.
It's beautiful. Your experience, I'm so grateful that you could share that from 1984 and just really tangibly use that imagery, because I think this idea, okay, we can heal ourselves by, feeling to heal. As somebody, and I'm super open about this, I used to really struggle with food addiction, sugar addiction. I didn't like those feelings. I didn't want to feel shame, right? Or grief or anger. And so it's, food really, I'll tell you what, you want to mask
And
it?
it's because we think those feelings mean something about us, or
That's
that they
right.
are a barometer of what we're like or what we deserve. And they aren't.
No,
They're
that's
just
it.
we haven't known how to process
That's
our
right.
upset. And so it doesn't say a word about us. Nothing can say a word about us except that which created us. And that which created us says, you're good, you're eternal, you're beautiful, you're deserving, you're innocent, and you are actually, in fact, already healed.
Mm.
So it seems like it's not a good idea to argue with whatever it is that created us. It's really quite futile.
I so I'm so appreciating you bringing that in. That's, I know, comes up in the course so many times in so many different ways. Um, we think, we've ruined ourselves or other people. Even when it comes to, what I understand, illness or an argument, and it keeps saying, and what you just said is, I'll let you speak to it, but what I keep getting is, you have it. I listen to you all the time. I'll listen and repeat, like, you haven't done any of that. You can't. You can't. You
Well,
can't do
not
that.
only that, keep remembering nothing is stored anywhere.
Right.
Every single second is brand new and clean.
Yeah.
Why do it's only our lack of understanding about how life actually works that we think we have to keep bringing along these things we're afraid of, and we have to keep bringing along our defenses, and we have to keep
Mm.
manufacturing things over and over and over and over again, when if I could only keep in mind there's no past, there's nothing following along behind me. All those things I fear I've done, they aren't there. There's only now. And right now, I get to keep changing my mind. I don't have to go back and try to clean up the mess from back there. There's not a mess back there. There's only right now. And so, as I can keep deciding, right now is not when I have to understand a bunch of stuff.
Mm.
Right now is when I need to follow my intuition. I need to feel, as best I can, kindness toward myself and everybody else. I want to see, and this is really important, that everybody, no matter what, they're doing the highest and best of which they are literally capable, given this load of pain they're carrying around with them,
Yeah.
because they haven't known that they can let it go.
And I
That's
think that answers, this idea of people that might, it, we have people that are doing all kinds of things. It can seem very, very upsetting,
They are doing, there are many
Yeah,
people doing terrible things. So we're
that's
not
right.
pretending like
Right.
not happening.
Right.
But what we want to do is look at the big picture
Yeah.
with their bad behavior translated into it's a desperate call for help.
Yeah.
A desperate call for help. Like they're hanging on to to a rope and it's about to break and they're about to fall into the fire. In other words,
Mm,
it's when people are desperate, don't forget your stress response is turned on
yeah.
high. It's turned on high. And for those who may not know a little bit about brain function, when the organism senses danger, and it doesn't matter what kind of danger it is, psychological danger or a lion's chasing you in the woods, whatever it is, it turns on the stress response. And 1,200 hormones get dumped into the system that are going to prepare you to fight or flee. 40% of your brain goes offline because you don't need to be thinking, which is why so many people can't think straight and the stress response is only designed to be on for a very short burst of a problem. Either you escape the bus that's driving down the street and you don't get run over, or you do. In other words, a stressful situation like this is meant to be resolved quickly. But when people are afraid and they're upset about themselves and other people, you're keeping your stress response turned on 24/7.
Yeah.
And everything sort of gets wrecked when you've got all those hormones in the body on forever, so to speak. And so there are here physical world reasons for keeping. I do have to tell you this one story.
Yeah. Please.
My two grandchildren who live out here in Denver are 13 and 15. When my 15-year-old grandson was just about to have his 9th birthday, he was in the 3rd grade. His birthday's in May, so it's kind of the end of the 3rd grade. And I was down here. I was living in Florida at the time, so I was here for his birthday, and he's a super smart little kid. So I thought, Jacob, it's time for me to explain something to you. So I'm going to tell Jacob about the stress response. So I'm using what I think is not quite 9-year-old language. So I'm talking about something, I'm not using any scientific language, but when people are upset and part of your brain turns off and the back part of your brain turns on. And he said, Grandma, that's called the amygdala, and I already know how the stress response works.
Oh my God.
I thought I would just pass out. It's like, how does a 3rd grader know how the stress response works? And I asked his mother, I said, how is this possible? And she said, oh, they learned that last year in the 2nd grade in a science unit.
Oh my
I
gosh.
thought
That's great.
most adults walking the earth don't know as much about the stress response as this little kid did. So, in any event, we are often walking around with our body chemistry all fouled up because those hormones are not supposed to be there, but just in terms of the emergency. And then they're supposed to reset to normal bodily function. The brain can turn back on, other functions of the body can resume. But if you live all of your life with your stress response turned on, you're just setting yourself up at the physical level for all kinds of difficulties. So it's like
Mm.
we want to learn that we need to experience whatever upset we may be experiencing because if we're upset, our stress response is turned on and that is impairing other functions.
Mm.
Like you can't think straight for one main thing because your whole frontal lobe is turned off.
Right.
So if you look at it just from the physical body world, you greatly interfere with just your basic functionality when you're upset all the time.
Yeah.
And so we don't want to be upset all the time, but hiding it under alcohol or anything else. I want to deal with and clear out the upset.
Right. Very, very powerfully said. Before we come to a close, I do want to talk for just a moment about this idea of miracles, the Course in Miracles, how it's defined in A Course in Miracles. And, the what I keep getting over and over again is that you can't fail. Anyone who's doing this course and practices it, you can't fail at it. At least that's what I've read. That's how I read it.
It's not like a chemistry course that you can
Right.
go, you're just out of here because you cannot do chemistry. Well, there's no such thing as not being able to do life. It's some way we do life right offhand. Well,
Right.
somebody asked Bill Thetford once, like, what is a miracle? Because it's strangely not defined in one sentence. And it's like, he said, it's that shift in your perception that allows you to see the loving presence in whatever you're looking at. In other words, it's like it's a shift in our perception that allows us to see love. So
Beautiful.
that's what it's all about. It's like this is shifting our perception so that instead of seeing enemies, we see people who are calling for help and we respond to it. That kind of thing. So it's like we can look out and, probably everybody knows somebody who can go, gee, those trees are really ugly. And somebody else goes, those are the most beautiful trees I've ever seen. In other words, everything is an individual perception, so to speak. So it's like shifting our perception where we choose to recognize that love is the ground of absolutely everything in form, and everybody wins and nobody loses.
Oh, that's really. This is what when you started out and you said you just felt the truth. These things that you're saying, right? This shift in your perspective that allows you to see love and a loving presence. Everybody wins and no one loses. I'm like, yeah, yes, please. That's the world I prefer to live in. Thank you very much.
And you see, what's great is that no one else can keep you from it. It's not like you go, I would love to see a world like that, but you guys out there are all in the way. It's like, nobody's in the way. I can choose to see anybody I see as they're part of the loving scene as well, so to speak. So it's very empowering to realize that my perspective rests in my hands alone, period, end of story. I'm not shackled by somebody else's perception. It can be all over the map, but my perception is entirely up to me.
My last question for you, Carol. So it's actually, I'm thinking about it now. I call them heart flares. Like, what if there's a heart flare? If your heart, it's actually probably a better way to say it is there any guidance that you're getting, or anything that I like to just leave space? If there's anything I didn't ask you or anything coming through you that is feeling like it wants to be shared here, because this has been such a rich conversation. I literally could talk to you for hours and hours. I hope we can do this again. This is just, I feel like we've scratched the surface in a very meaningful way, and I am so grateful for you and your wisdom. So, are there any heart flares or intuitive guidance coming through to share?
I think that the most important thing is the sense of the power that comes when we realize I am never the victim of anything outside myself. That that my thought processes are at the core of everything, and I'm the one who gets to decide to see things lovingly and appropriately and kindly and with great understanding, and to know that if behavior over here is not what it should be, that I can not engage in any sort of judgment about that, but realize everybody and this is the key, is always doing the highest and best of which they are capable at every moment, which does not ever call for condemnation on my part or anybody's part. So it's that recognizing I'm the one who chooses to see the world the way I see it. And
Right.
nobody gets in the way of my choice about how to see it. If I want to see everything as loving or a call for love and respond accordingly, who keeps me from doing that? Nobody.
Mm. Drop the mic. We're going to just like, that is it right there. That is
That's it.
it. I it's something, there's something to be said. You living this work. I was so excited to connect with you, to meet you, to listen and to share your wisdom. Um, it's such a gift. I mean, so I'm saying this to everyone listening, if you pick it up, great. I mean, I encourage people to do it because it's just so powerful. And you're just a testament of, 46 plus years of really living these practices, which, I mean, you could hear it. You have such joy and acceptance and peace and love. And to me, I guess part of the reason I'm so obsessed with it is I just imagine a world where we can all feel that way, the way that, that source sees us. And you're living this. You are.
And
Thank
Bill lived it as well.
you.
I wrote his biography
Mm,
because he was such an extraordinary human being. Plus, there was a lot of nonsense about this origin of the course and so on out there. It's like I have to set all this straight while I'm
yeah.
still here. And so it's not only about Bill, it's also the most comprehensive story of how the course, because I knew all the people involved. And you can't
Wow.
write the story unless you know all the people involved and you've been there, done that.
Wow.
So to see his fantastic sense of humor and his kindness and how much fun he was to be around. In other words, he so amazingly embodied this work that he helped to bring forward. He didn't just bring it forward and then go over here and be a grump someplace.
Yeah.
He could be the most hysterically funny human being on the planet.
Wow.
He was very joyful
Mm.
as he incorporated his own teaching, so to speak, more and more and more into his life. But he was an extraordinary human being by all counts.
Mm. Well, we can dedicate this conversation to him, to those who've gone before us, and I'd love to dedicate it to you and the work you're doing and the fact that you listened to that guidance and you've recorded all 365 lessons and just who you are as a human being. And I will also add the dedication to everyone, to you, my beloved listener, because to me, what we're talking about is really accessing this idea of your you-est you. To me, that is the you call it the Holy Spirit, the divine source energy, love. That is us connected to that source. And you just gave such beautiful examples of life, what it looks like and how it can be when you're tuning in to your you-est you.
Exactly. And so we can
Yeah.
just, I think it's important for every one of us as we look at some of the difficulties in our own country and abroad and so on, to bring it into practice, to hold no animosity toward any, regardless of what things look like,
Yeah.
because the behaviors can be terrible, as I say, but the presence of the person and persons are not defiled ever. Love cannot be destroyed or
Right.
damaged or eliminated in any way. And if we want to know how we can be helpful in a world that's got as much division in it as appears to be right now, it's to hold that truth. When you
Mm.
watch the news or you talk to somebody, it's like these are a whole bunch of people asking for help, And
Yeah.
in my mind, I'm going to offer it.
Mm. And like you say, love has no opposite.
That's right.
Love has no opposite. Wow.
That's right.
Woo. Well, so much love to you, Carol. My goodness.
Oh,
My
you've
heart is
frozen up
just
again.
so much love for you. And I, on behalf of you, if that's okay, I'm going to extend love literally to you, my listener, my friend, my sister, my brother, wherever you are. I really do feel that, well, we're all related. So,
Yes.
yeah, we're all
Well, thank
related.
you so kindly. It's been just a delight to visit with you, and life moves on.
Beautiful. In love. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, beloved listener, for being here, my friend, for opening your heart. And may this be a blessing, this conversation in your life. My friend, I'm so grateful and honored to be here with you on your journey and being your You-est you. Thank you for watching this episode, for being part of this incredible community and this mission to really step into your light, to your highest purpose. I believe that as we all do that, we all can really be our best selves and uplift consciousness and humanity. So thank you. I also wanted to say that if you are looking for greater support right now, maybe you're having a health concern or you're looking to really step into that next version, best version of yourself, please come connect with me, whether it's for more resources or coaching or guidance. I would love to support you in any way that I can. Just go to juliereisler.com. You can book a powerful one-on-one breakthrough session there. You can connect with me. I would love to meet you. I'd love to hear how I can be on this journey with you. And before I forget, if you'd like a little more of this good vibe tribe and would like to digest these episodes with a high vibe community, just go to Facebook and look up the You-est You podcast community. You'll find us there. Love always. And thank you so much for taking the time and energy to truly stepping into your authenticity and being your You-est you.